What happens now? That Venezuela's president is gone. This is one of those days that will be studied years from now, not because of the explosions, not because of the speeches, but because of what quietly begins after them. Today, Nicolás Maduro is gone, captured, removed, taken out of the country. For some, this moment feels like an ending. For others, it feels like justice. For many inside Venezuela, it feels unreal. But history is brutally clear about one thing. The removal of a president is not the resolution of a crisis. It is the opening of its most dangerous chapter. And what happens next will not be decided by speeches, headlines, or international statements. It will be decided by power, fear, control, and time. Today is not about what the United States did. Today is about what Venezuela becomes now that the center has disappeared. When a president is captured, three assumptions collapse at the same time. The assumption of continuity, the assumption of command, and the assumption of restraint. Venezuela is now operating without all three. For years, Nicolás Maduro functioned as more than a political leader. He was a stabilizing symbol for a fragmented system, a reference point for loyalty, and a shield behind which competing factions could coexist without openly fighting each other. That shield is now gone. And when that happens, power does not politely transfer. It reassembles. To understand what comes next, we need to understand what Venezuela actually was before today. Because Venezuela was not a normal presidential system. It was a layered structure of survival. At the top, the presidency. Beneath it, military leadership. Alongside it, intelligence networks. Around it, economic gatekeepers tied to oil, ports, currency access, and logistics. And beneath all of that, a population that learned to adapt to scarcity, uncertainty, and sudden change. Maduro's role was not to control every layer, his role was to balance them. That balance has now been violently removed. The first phase begins immediately. It is called the power vacuum phase. This phase does not look like chaos at first, it looks like silence. In Caracas today, streets are quieter than usual. People are not celebrating openly. They are not protesting. They are waiting. Waiting is not calm. Waiting is fear without direction. People wait because they don't know who is watching. They wait because they don't know who is in charge. They wait because history has taught them that the wrong movement at the wrong moment can be fatal. This silence is the most important signal of the day. Inside the government, something else is happening. Everyone is counting. Military units are counting who answers orders. Ministers are counting who shows up to meetings. Security agencies are counting loyalty, silence, and hesitation. In moments like this, power does not announce itself. It reveals itself indirectly. Who controls communications? Who controls transportation? Who controls fuel distribution? Who controls food access? Those are the real questions. Not elections, not constitutions, not promises. Venezuela now enters what analysts call the fragmentation window. This window usually lasts between days and weeks, and it is the most dangerous period for any country experiencing leadership removal. Here's why. When a leader disappears suddenly, the system does not know whether to preserve itself or reinvent itself. So different parts of the system attempt different strategies at the same time. Some try to hold the old structure together. Some try to replace it quickly. Some try to exploit the confusion. That is when mistakes are made. One of the biggest risks right now is overlapping authority. Venezuela technically has a vice president. It has an interior minister. It has a defense minister. But authority on paper is meaningless unless it is enforced on the ground. If the military remains unified under a single command, Venezuela may stabilize temporarily even without Maduro. If the military fractures, everything accelerates. History shows us that when armed forces split into competing loyalties, countries don't collapse slowly, they fracture suddenly. This is why the next 72 hours matter more than the next 72 days. There is another factor that makes Venezuela uniquely vulnerable at this moment: the economy. For years, Venezuela's economy has not functioned as a traditional system. It has operated through improvisation, informal networks, and survival mechanisms. People rely on personal connections, local power brokers, access to dollars, access to goods. When leadership collapses, these informal systems don't disappear. They become more aggressive. Black markets expand, price signals distort, hoarding increases, trust evaporates, and once trust disappears, recovery becomes exponentially harder. This is where many outside observers get it wrong. They assume that removing a leader automatically improves conditions, that change equals progress. But removal creates uncertainty, and uncertainty punishes the weakest first. Food distribution becomes irregular, medicine access becomes uneven, transportation becomes unreliable, not because anyone planned it, but because coordination breaks before replacement systems are ready. Now let's talk about the military dimension. The operation that captured Maduro was described as surgical and successful. That matters, but not in the way people think. A clean operation does not guarantee a clean aftermath. In fact, it often creates a false sense of control. The real question is not whether the operation succeeded. The real question is whether control can be maintained without escalation. Because once a president is removed by force, the remaining loyalists face a choice: surrender quietly or resist loudly. Resistance doesn't require tanks or planes, it requires disruption. And disruption is cheap. Even small acts can have massive effects. Blocking roads, disrupting ports, sabotaging infrastructure, interrupting fuel supply. These actions don't overthrow governments, they paralyze them. And paralysis is enough to trigger humanitarian stress, economic shock, and international pressure. International reaction now becomes critical. Some governments will condemn the action, some will remain silent, some will quietly adjust their posture. But what matters is not what they say publicly, it's what they do quietly. Do they evacuate personnel? Do they issue travel warnings? Do they suspend cooperation? Do they prepare for refugee flows? Those decisions shape the next phase. Refugee pressure is a serious risk. Venezuela has already experienced one of the largest migration crises in modern history. Millions have left over the past decade. Another period of instability could reignite that flow. And migration is not just a humanitarian issue. It is a political and economic one. Neighboring countries are watching closely. Now comes the most misunderstood part of regime removal: the legitimacy gap. Once a leader is removed, whoever comes next must answer a brutal question. Why you? Not in speeches, not in press conferences, but in practice. Who accepts your authority? Who obeys your orders? Who defends your position when challenged? Legitimacy does not come from removal of the old leader. It must be built. And building it takes time Venezuela may not have. The opposition faces a paradox. For years, many opposition figures have demanded Maduro's removal. Today, that demand appears fulfilled, but victory creates responsibility. If opposition leadership cannot present a unified, credible, and realistic plan quickly, hope turns into disappointment. And disappointment is dangerous, because disappointment radicalizes. There is also the risk of external overreach. Statements about rebuilding, restructuring, or involvement, even if well-intentioned, can backfire. Why? Because Venezuela's population is deeply sensitive to sovereignty, even after years of hardship. Any perception that decisions are being imposed from outside can fracture support internally. Stability requires Venezuelans to believe the next phase belongs to them, not to foreign powers, not to corporations, not to geopolitical strategies. Another critical element is information control. Right now, rumors move faster than facts. Messaging apps are flooded, videos circulate without context, claims multiply. In unstable environments, information becomes a weapon. Controlling narratives becomes as important as controlling territory. If misinformation fills the vacuum, fear spreads faster than authority. The coming days will be defined by a series of quiet signals. Watch for curfews. Watch for fuel restrictions. Watch for communication disruptions. Watch for bank closures. Watch for changes in military posture. None of these will be announced dramatically. They will simply appear, and when they do, they will tell us which direction Venezuela is moving. There are three broad scenarios. The first is managed transition. In this scenario, military leadership remains unified, opposition figures coordinate, and international pressure encourages stability rather than escalation. This is the least likely scenario, but not impossible. It requires discipline, restraint, and compromise. The second scenario is prolonged uncertainty. This is the most common outcome historically. No immediate collapse, no immediate stabilization, just weeks or months of ambiguity. Power struggles behind the scenes, economic stagnation, public anxiety. This scenario drains the population slowly. The third scenario is fragmentation and escalation. This is the most dangerous. Competing factions, localized violence, disruption of essential services. Once this begins, reversing it becomes extremely difficult. Which scenario unfolds will depend on decisions made right now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. Decisions by military commanders, by political figures, by international actors. One final truth must be acknowledged. Removing a leader solves a political problem. It does not solve a structural one. Venezuela's challenges, economic collapse, institutional erosion, social trauma, do not disappear with one capture, they remain. And now they must be confronted without the central figure that once absorbed pressure. Today will be remembered as dramatic, but tomorrow will be decisive. Because the most important moments in history are not the ones with explosions. They are the ones where people quietly decide who they will follow, who they will resist, and who they no longer fear. That process has begun, and the outcome is still unknown. If you want to understand Venezuela's future, don't focus on the moment of capture. Focus on what fills the silence after it. That silence is where the country's fate will be decided.